Just before the wedding began, Emma, my fiancé's younger sister, walked up to me with a scornful look. You'll never be the most important woman to him. I've always come first. And then Leo, my fiancé, walked over right after. I waited for a reaction from him, a word of defense or denial, but instead, he simply smiled and echoed her words as if in agreement. She's right, you know that. I calmly handed the wedding bouquet to Emma and quietly said, well then, you two enjoy the ceremony. I turned around and walked out of the Lancaster Hotel, leaving behind a lavish wedding worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, an Ellie Saab wedding dress, and hundreds of guests waiting. Outside, a limousine was already waiting, and inside it was the secret I had kept all along. Leo and I met 4 years ago at a networking event for people in the finance industry. He stood out with his charming looks and a confidence that radiated in every word and gesture. We both worked in finance, where ambition is a must, and from the very beginning, I felt we were walking the same path. We both wanted a life that was comfortable, luxurious, and full. We dreamed of a future together, a life where everything was perfect, everything in its rightful place. And in my mind, a happy family life with Leo was the ideal I had imagined for myself. But looking back, I realized maybe I had been too quick to place all my trust in a rosy vision I had created. My initial impression of our relationship gave me a sense of security, but now I found myself lost in the very world I had built. Everything seemed perfect, but it was only a facade, and I had been deceived by what I thought was real. Still, I believed in Leo's love. I held on to the hope that we could overcome anything, even when faced with the strange closeness between him and his sister Emma. I thought it was just part of being in his family, something I'd have to accept if I wanted to be part of his life. But the truth was much harsher. From the start, I sensed that Emma had an unhealthy relationship with Leo. She always acted like someone irreplaceable in his life. At family gatherings, she would sit on Leo's lap, wrapping her arms tightly around him like they were a couple, even with me sitting right there. I tried to convince myself that it was just her way of showing affection, but the discomfort was impossible to shake. Every time I saw them that close, I felt like an outsider pushed out of my own relationship. That feeling grew stronger when I decided to move in with Leo. It should have been a happy decision, an important step forward in our relationship. But Emma couldn't accept me entering Leo's life. She didn't just oppose it, she cried, expressed her disappointment and anger. She openly said she didn't think he should marry anyone at all. At that moment, all I could do was sit quietly, trying to stay calm, but deep inside, I felt a crack growing wider. How could I step into this life when Emma insisted she was the most important person in Leo's world? I thought time would help Emma realize that I was part of the family, that I would be with Leo and build a future with him. But instead of backing off, Emma became more aggressive. She didn't just express disapproval, she flaunted her jealousy, making things more and more tense. Every time Leo and I made plans, she found a way to insert herself, and every time, Leo just brushed it off with a smile, telling me not to worry. It's just how Emma is. But what I was feeling wasn't irrational worry. The situation kept getting worse. Leo never defended me. Whenever I expressed my discomfort about the excessive closeness between him and his sister, he would just laugh and tell me not to overthink it, that it was just a normal family thing. He didn't realize that I couldn't live in a relationship where a third person constantly intruded into every moment. Even though I tried my best to accept it, to find a way to blend into his family, Leo's silence only made me feel more and more abandoned. Leo lived in a world of luxury. He didn't just wear expensive watches. He wore designer suits, all clear signs of a life full of comfort and wealth that I once believed we were building together. He traveled first class, always appeared at lavish parties with successful friends, and luxury cars were always his main mode of transportation. I used to be proud of the life I had by his side, thinking that we would build a solid future together, one where money would never be an issue. However, the longer I lived with him, the more I sensed that something was off. Strange financial signs began to appear, things I simply couldn't ignore. Once, when we were having dinner at Bellagio, one of the most famous and expensive restaurants in Las Vegas, everything seemed to be going smoothly until he handed over his credit card to pay the bill. But his card was declined. Leo just laughed it off and said it was a system error. Nothing to worry about. I wanted to believe him, but a gnawing feeling of unease lingered in my mind. There had been times before when his card was declined, and each time I convinced myself that he was just unlucky with minor transactions. Then strange things kept happening. Whenever we went shopping, he frequently asked me to front money from my personal credit card to pay for expensive items. There were times he even asked me to pay upfront for our trips, saying he'd transfer the money later. "I'll pay you right back," he always said, but the money never came. These weren't just cases of bad luck anymore. I began to realize something wasn't right. When I finally spoke up and offered to help him manage his spending, I didn't expect such a strong reaction. I only wanted to help him balance his finances, not just for him, but for our shared future. But as soon as I suggested it, he immediately refused, saying he knew how to manage his own finances and didn't need anyone interfering in his personal spending decisions. Leo said it gently, but in his eyes, I could sense avoidance, like he was hiding something. At that time, I wasn't decisive enough to fully suspect him. I just thought maybe Leo was a carefree person who didn't pay much attention to numbers or financial details. But these things kept circling in my mind. Part of me didn't want to face the truth, because if it was true, then nothing would be perfect anymore. Part of me didn't want to create tension when everything still looked fine on the surface. I told myself maybe he was just lacking in money management skills, that he wasn't financially savvy, and not everyone knows how to save. But gradually, these small incidents became clearer signs of something I didn't want to admit. Leo was hiding something big. It wasn't enough to complicate everything just yet, but it was definitely something I couldn't ignore. The feeling of doubt grew stronger, and I started to wonder if I really knew his life, if I truly knew who Leo was. That fundraising event in Soho, I had no idea it would be the moment that changed my life completely. It was an evening filled with lights. Everything was carefully prepared, from tables full of food to interesting conversations all around. As usual, I smiled and engaged in the chats, mentally preparing for our upcoming wedding. A wedding I had poured my heart into, where Leo and I were supposed to begin a new chapter in life. I happened to meet Marcus Blackwell at that event, a well-known businessman I had heard about in conversations with Leo. Marcus was a prominent figure in finance and investment, but I never thought he would be connected to my life in the way I was about to discover. When he found out I was about to marry Leo, his expression changed immediately, and an odd silence enveloped the moment. I didn't think much of it, but his silence made me feel something was wrong. After a few tense seconds, Marcus suddenly showed me a photo on his phone. At first, I thought it was just a normal picture, maybe from a vacation or trip, but as I looked closer, I was speechless. In the photo, Leo was sitting on Marcus's lap, on a yacht off the coast of Santorini. I looked again at the picture. My heart felt like it had stopped. A whirlwind of emotions surged inside me, but I tried to stay calm, even though my body was trembling as the truth began to surface. Marcus didn't beat around the bush. He got straight to the point, something I could never have imagined. "I've been financing Leo's entire lifestyle for the past 3 years," he said. "He told me you knew everything and that you were okay with it." Those words hit like a deadly blow. Each word, each sentence, felt like a punch to my face. Everything suddenly became clear, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Leo didn't just deceive me. He used me as part of a performance to cover up a truth I would have never known. It felt like my blood had been drained, like I had lived in a dream where everything was false. I had once trusted Leo, had once thought he was someone I could spend my whole life with. But now I realized it was all just a facade, a deception I was dragged into without even knowing. Everything was turned upside down in just a few short seconds. I couldn't accept this truth. The feeling of betrayal paralyzed me, left me speechless. What I had once believed to be a happy relationship, true love, was now nothing but shattered pieces. Marcus looked at me, his eyes filled with regret and sympathy. But I didn't need his sympathy. I needed the truth. And the truth was, Leo had used me as the perfect cover to hide his secret affairs. He had lied to me not just about finances, but about everything I had once believed in. When I looked at Marcus, I realized how long I had been fooled. The dreams of a grand wedding, of a perfect life, Now they were nothing but emptiness and rage. And I didn't know what I was going to do with this truth, but I knew that the only thing I could do at that moment was face it. After learning the truth, I didn't cause a scene, didn't rush to demand an explanation from Leo. I didn't ask him any questions, didn't say anything. I understood that even if I did ask, he would only answer with unconvincing excuses, and I didn't need any more lies. Instead, I chose silence. I chose to act in a way that I knew would change everything, but not immediately. I wasn't going to let Leo think I was someone easily broken, wasn't going to let him feel like he had total control over me. I began to play the role of the happy fiancé that Leo wanted. I smiled in engagement photos, posed with family and friends as if I were living in a fairy tale, where I was the beautiful bride about to enter a new life. Everyone looked at us and believed it was an ideal relationship, a perfect wedding. I threw a bachelorette party with friends, sent sweet messages to Leo every day, told him words of love, words that made him think I was still clueless about the truth behind it all. I wanted him to believe I was still the obedient bride-to-be, unaware of everything he had done. Everything went on as usual, but inside me, everything was changing day by day. While Leo thought I fully trusted him and that everything was fine, I was quietly making a plan. I didn't want to run away, didn't want to cause a scene that would expose his betrayal to everyone. That wasn't how I wanted to handle this. I didn't want to escape from the truth. I wanted Leo to face the consequences on his most important day, right at the wedding he had spent so long planning. I wanted him to confront the truth in a way that was unavoidable, and I wanted him to understand that what he had done could never be forgiven easily. I wasn't in a rush. Nothing was urgent. Everything was meticulously planned. I didn't do anything dramatic, no loud actions. Just small steps, one by one, each moment carefully designed to make sure he wouldn't be able to escape the truth I had already known. Leo would never realize that I knew everything until it was too late. And when it all exploded, I wanted him to be forced to reckon with everything he had done, to realize that I wasn't someone he could so easily use as he had thought. I stepped out of the wedding hall with a gentle smile, but inside me, everything had completely changed. That wedding, a wedding I had spent months preparing for, a day everyone had looked forward to, suddenly meant nothing at all. Everything around me continued as if nothing had happened, as if no one noticed the profound change in that moment. But I knew, the moment I stepped out of that hall, everything had changed forever. The music still played in the air, gentle, romantic ballads as if nothing had gone wrong. The guests were still laughing, toasting champagne, their cheers echoing through the luxurious hotel ballroom. Everyone was enjoying our big day, while I quietly walked away, without a goodbye, without a sound. But inside me, the world had collapsed. Just like that, I walked away, and Leo's world began to fall apart right after. And then, while I was quietly leaving the hotel, a silent but weighty shift began to unfold. I didn't look back, but I knew everything was starting to fall apart. Marcus had executed his plan, like a flawless strategy that no one could have anticipated. Every one of Leo's transactions, every payment he had prepared for that day, was outright rejected. Marcus had frozen all of Leo's accounts, stopped all transactions, and ordered the cancellation of every payment. The catering vendors Leo had worked with, the ones meant to continue serving guests throughout the event, received an urgent call to stop everything. The music cut off abruptly, no more cheerful melodies, and the champagne stopped flowing. A silence engulfed the entire space, and I knew, even if no one said a word, Leo would feel the collapse in that moment. Everything, from the grandest wedding to the lavish celebration he thought he had under control, had now turned into rubble. Everything Leo had prepared, everything he believed he would have, vanished in an instant. And then, at that very moment, I disappeared from the hotel, no explanations, no words spoken. I didn't need to look back at him, didn't need to say another thing. Our wedding, all the hopes Leo had built, now lay in ruins. I stepped into the waiting limousine, and everything outside the window seemed to blur, no longer of any importance. A wave of relief washed over me, and I knew I had done the right thing. Not just because I had left Leo, but because I had shown him the truth on the very day he believed he had won. Marcus didn't stop there. He didn't just bring everything crashing down at the hotel, didn't just destroy the wedding in mere seconds. He continued to push Leo into a situation I never could have imagined. What I thought would be a minor act of revenge, a temporary disruption, had now become a total collapse, an inevitable end. First was the luxury apartment Leo had always taken pride in, the place he had lived for years in extravagance, where lavish walls and expensive items made him believe he was successful. That apartment, which he had considered a sanctuary and a reflection of himself, was now repossessed. Marcus didn't just stop payments. He made every lease agreement void overnight. Leo had nowhere to return to, no footing left in the luxurious life he had built on lies. Next was the Bentley, the car Leo loved to flaunt as a symbol of success, of the social status he believed he had attained. Every time I saw it parked in his garage, I could see the arrogance and self-satisfaction on his face. But now, that car, an asset Leo deemed indispensable, was towed away. It was a massive blow to him. Leo, once a seemingly successful man, admired by many, quickly found himself penniless. From elegant parties, first-class trips, and designer brands he endlessly boasted about, he now had nothing but shame. The friends he once trusted had abandoned him, and the assets he thought untouchable were now painful memories. He had nowhere to go, no place to hide, and no one left to protect him. That scene, though I didn't witness it myself, I could feel it vividly through every detail Marcus recounted. Leo hadn't just lost material things. He lost all the pride he had built. A man who seemed to have everything was now cast aside, left behind in a world he no longer had the power to control. Amid all the ruins, I realized that revenge didn't always have to be loud. Sometimes, collapse comes quietly, making one realize too late that everything is gone. What chilled me the most wasn't the news about Leo's debts or his total bankruptcy, but the name that was mentioned by the caller, Silas Morello. I had never heard that name before, but when Marcus read it aloud, I could sense a shift in the air. The entire room suddenly turned tense, as if a dark shadow had engulfed it. Silas Morello was no ordinary man. He wasn't just some CEO or a typical investor found in stories of money and power. Silas was a powerful figure on the Upper East Side, where every event comes at a cost. He was someone I had only ever heard about in the whispered tales of the elite. And now, I realized that Leo had crossed paths with someone he should never have trifled with. Marcus paused for a moment, as if he, too, could feel the tension in the air. When he continued, his voice grew lower. Leo set up a shell company to embezzle $3 million from Silas. He deceived Silas, convincing him to invest in a fake deal. An empty deal, just a trick so Leo could take the money and disappear. My eyes widened. $3 million. That was no small amount. But what horrified me more was the dawning realization that I had been too naive to think things would be as simple as living a life of easy wealth. Silas wasn't the kind of man who would just sit still and let things go. He wasn't someone who resolved issues through lawyers or public debates. He was the kind of man no one wanted to cross. Silas wanted something different. He wanted Leo to completely disappear. I could feel the force behind every word Marcus spoke, and I understood that this was no longer just a financial conflict. It had become a matter of life and death. The air in the room felt thick. I said nothing, only listened to what Marcus went on to say. He wanted Leo gone, not in the literal sense, but in a way that only people like Silas could manage. This was a warning not just for Leo, but for anyone daring to cross the line. What I saw in Marcus's eyes, the anxiety in every word he spoke, made me realize things had gone far beyond anything I could have imagined. I didn't know what Silas would do to Leo, but I understood that this wouldn't end here. And now, all I could do was watch it unfold, while Leo, the man I had once loved, was destroying himself, and everything he had built would soon collapse. Marcus and I went to Leo's old apartment without knowing what we would find. Ever since we left the hotel and everything exploded, I could no longer see a clear path ahead. I just wanted an answer, even the smallest one, to finally close this chapter. We stopped in front of the old building, now locked. The atmosphere there was cold, with no sign of life, only empty walls and vacant space that Leo once called his hiding place. I had thought I would find him smug or defiant, but what I saw was something completely different. Leo was slumped in front of the apartment door, holding his head as if all his hope had vanished. He wasn't the man I used to know. No more confidence, no more pride I once saw every time he walked into a room. Only a desperate man remained, as if everything he had built was now nothing but ruins. That sight made me feel like I wasn't standing in front of him, but outside of it all, watching the downfall of someone I once thought was everything. I stood there for a while silent. Then finally, I looked at him and asked the question I could no longer hold in. Did you ever truly love me? My voice was calm, but inside, the question felt like sharp knives, stabbing through the broken pieces of trust I once had for him. Leo looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears, but no explanation could satisfy what I needed to hear. He bowed his head, saying nothing. But I couldn't let him avoid the question. Why did you never stand up for me against Emma? That question had been bottled up for too long. Time after time, I had endured Emma's dominance, lived in her shadow, while Leo never once defended me. Surely, by now he understood that I could no longer live in a relationship like that, where I was always on the sidelines, just a side character in his story with his family. Then I continued with the question I had carried the longest. Why did you take money from Marcus, from Silas, just to fund your lavish lifestyle? I couldn't understand why Leo would do that. Why he used me as a tool in his game, only to cover up his dark secrets. He looked at me and then broke down in tears. Those tears didn't move me. They only made things clearer, that I had nothing left to hold on to. I was never good enough. I just wanted to be someone you could be proud of, Leo choked out. His words made me feel like I was looking at a man who never truly knew who he was. He wanted to make me proud, but chose all the wrong ways to do it. His whole life revolved around appearances, pleasing others, instead of truly loving. And that, right there, was the reason why in everything he did, I could never see real love. I responded quietly, without a trace of emotion, but my heart ached. That's not love. That's greed. Those words weren't just an answer to my question. They were the explanation for everything I had endured for so long. Leo never loved me. He loved himself, loved what he could gain through me, but he never truly loved me. In the end, I left. This time it wasn't a temporary departure. This was a real goodbye, no turning back, no regrets. I had lost a husband I once thought was everything, but I had nothing left to regret. Leo would never be the man I needed, and I didn't need to explain that any further. We were over, and I was free. Leo called me countless times after I left, but I never answered. Each ring, each message from him couldn't make me return, couldn't change the decision I had silently made. Emma sent me a 3-page email filled with blame and criticism, but I wasn't moved. I replied with a single short line. I hope you're happy being the most important person to him. I had no time to argue, nothing left to say. They had chosen their path, and I had chosen mine. And then, the final message arrived. Silas Morello wants to meet you. That message, though brief, carried a clear threat I couldn't ignore. But before I had time to think about it, everything changed. Leo disappeared, without a trace, without an explanation. That night, he didn't return to the apartment, and no one could find him. No police, no search parties, just silence. I didn't ask any more questions. I didn't need to know. Marcus and I still kept in touch, but no longer about Leo or the games he used to play. Now we were partners in a new project, and everything seemed to be going in the right direction. What I had lost no longer mattered. I was no longer tied to the past. No more Leo, no more Emma, no more fragments of a life I once thought was everything. I poured a glass of wine, sat in my new apartment under the warm lights, and smiled. I have never felt so at peace.